It's Friday, folks, and welcome to another episode of Hornets Daily, your one stop shop for all things Charlotte Hornets. As you know, we're presented by Fan Arc, and I'm your host, Vance Ballard, but the good people out there, they call me VB. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, watching along with us. Be sure, if you haven't already, leave a like and a comment down in the comment section. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Enjoy watching you guys interact down in the comment section, getting to interact a little bit with you on my end as well. We'll continue to do that as we move into next week and continue to progress through our episodes here on Hornets Daily. As we mentioned, it is Friday. Going to try to have a little bit of fun, keep things a little bit lighter here, but there is still some buzz happening in the Queen City, and bringing it all to you is what we do here on Hornets Daily. We've now had a day to sit on the Antonio Reeves signing, and I've begun to wonder what impact, if any, can he have immediately on this Charlotte Hornets team. Is he going to play any role this season on the NBA roster? It's July, folks. We're right in the dog days of it, and the rumor mill is heating up hot and heavy. Some intriguing things on the internet. We'll talk about a couple of them that involve the Charlotte Hornets here today as well. We're going to talk about Grant Williams on today's show. Been a little bit since we've brought that name up, but now again it is July. People are starting to find things they haven't maybe seen before, and so Williams, a recent podcast visit from Grant Williams is in the news. We'll talk about some very interesting comments he had while on that show, and we're going to wrap things up today with a with something I saw on the internet again as well that I found to be quite interesting. What impact does the success this season for the Hornets have on the future of LaMelo Ball here in Charlotte? We'll flesh that out a little bit, discuss that a little more as we wrap the show up today. Again, nothing crazy on the docket today, but still some buzz going on in the Queen City, and we're going to bring it all to you, and we're going to do it without beating around the bush, folks. So let's go ahead and jump right in. As I mentioned, we've had a full 24 hours to sit on this thing to mull over the waiving of Damian Baugh to make room for the addition of Antonio Reeves, and now it's time to start to wonder, what can that actually mean for Charlotte? Does that have any impact at all right now on the regular season or the NBA roster? Now, when signing Reeves, we know that Charlotte addressed a much-needed issue in terms of three-point shooting. That was a drastic woe for the Hornets last year, so bringing in Antonio Reeves, a guy who shot 39.5% from beyond the arc in the NBA and 48.5% while in the G League, definitely addresses that problem quickly. But if you think about it, you're probably sitting there saying, Vance, well, they addressed those shooting woes in a variety of other ways this offseason as well, and with guys who maybe have better all-around games than Reeves as well. So what is it that made Antonio Reeves so attractive, that drew the front office to him, that desired them to bring him in on a two-way contract? I think personally it's been his ability to consistently prove himself a sharpshooter from distance, from beyond the arc. Again, I mentioned 39.5% in 44 NBA games last year, 48.5% during his time in the G League. But if you go all the way back to his fifth year at Kentucky, he shot over 44% from behind the three-point line while in college as well. So it's not just a matter anymore of, can he continue to be a lethal shooter from beyond the arc? Can he continue to keep up these numbers? Now it's pretty much Reeves. We know what he is. He is a three-point shooter. Those are his numbers from behind the three-point line. And keeping a guy like that is realistically very hard to do. Keeping him off the floor, anyway, is very hard to do, especially if things start to trend in the direction they were last year in terms of shooting from beyond the arc for the Charlotte Hornets. If the new additions don't work out the way it was intended, and they too struggle from distance, then Reeves is absolutely going to be able to make his way into the rotation, and as both a catch and shoot guy from beyond the arc, and if he can even get better on the ball and find his own shot, that'll only increase his chances of carving out a spot in this rotation. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that would mean for somebody else on the roster. Could be a guy like Sion James, maybe the odd man out, as he has to bounce up and down to make room for Reeves as well. But see, that could be beneficial to Sion as he gets some time to develop and work on his game as well. Again, we've after having a day to sit on it, it's just something that I've begun to think about. What is the point of signing Antonio Reeves? Do the Hornets have a plan for him right now, or is it like we talked about, strictly a developmental move to where they can build in the long term and have some shooting there as well? That still remains to be seen. An interesting question nonetheless. We'll have to wait and see what happens here with Antonio Reeves. Can he make an impact? Is he going to be good? Is that a good signing? All questions still yet to be answered by the regular season and the future, to be honest. Now, it's been a little while since we have talked about the rumor mill, the excitement of Summer League coming up, the new actual additions, the facts that we do know have kind of taken place of the rumor mill. But as I mentioned in the intro, we are in the dog days of summer. It's right smack in the middle of it, and things are kind of starting to slow down. You got to get some information. You got to get some takes off where you can. And the rumor mill is a good spot for that. When scouring the depths of the internet, I noticed a few interesting things yesterday, a couple of them involving the Charlotte Hornets. I saw a report yesterday that involved a trade that would see the Hornets acquiring Nick Claxton, a name we've mentioned a few weeks back prior to Summer League when we were talking more about who the Hornets are going to add. Nick Claxton's name has come up a couple times here on the show. This trade again involved a 3-team trade that would send Josh Green out to the Lakers as well as Grant Williams to the Nets. Again, seeing the Hornets receive Nick Claxton, I only jotted down the Hornets pieces of that trade because it is hypothetical at the moment. No need to really get into it, but it is interesting to see. There are some folks out there that think Nick Claxton would be a beneficial addition, getting rid of Josh Green, sending Grant Williams out to Brooklyn as well. Josh Green, a name we've mentioned a couple times as probably going to be on the move one way or the other out of Charlotte before the season begins anyway. But in my opinion, that wasn't the most interesting one I saw. The more intriguing hypothetical trade that I saw, I found it on Bleacher Report, and it said that the Hornets could end up landing Jarrett Allen from the Cavaliers, another name we've mentioned as a possibility being brought in here to Charlotte, and now again starting to pick up some steam in the slower parts of the summer. This would have meant the Hornets send a 2027 first-round pick and Grant Williams. To the 2027 first-round pick to the Lakers and Grant Williams in addition to another first-round pick out to Brooklyn. Now, I know when we talked about it, I clamored for Jarrett Allen. I think he would be a fantastic addition. He would instantly fix or drastically change the big man issues here in Charlotte as he's a staple piece on the inside, proven defender in the NBA, and his offensive game has some upside to it as well. There are some bright spots in his ability to score the basketball on the inside, but still all of that may be a little bit too steep. Grant Williams plus 2 first-round picks in that deal just to get back Jarrett Allen in return is a bit of a high asking price, especially since there is some value to Grant Williams being here in Charlotte. And those 2 first-round picks could potentially mean a lot in the future. I just don't know if all of that is worth just getting Jarrett Allen back, a veteran already in the league, and someone who, again, we know what he brings to the table, but it still just feels like a lot to me to give up 2 potential future pieces as well as Grant Williams, somebody who the front office has high hopes for here in Charlotte. I know he hasn't played a lot coming off of an injury, only able to make 45 games, but still a lot of hope and optimism surround that name. So I'm not sure if the Hornets would be willing to come off of him as well as 2 first-rounders just to get one big back in return as desperately as they do need guys at that position. It is starting to seem as we get further into the summer that the front office, that Coach Lee, are comfortable with the bigs that they have on the roster and trying to go forwards into this season with them. So that, again, could impact the possibility of that hypothetical trade, but it is the most interesting one that I saw floating around out on the old interweb in the last couple days. Again, it is the dog days of summer, July. Things just have to come out, and that is one of them. Now, speaking of Grant Williams, I told you we're going to bring him up today in abundance. We did that there. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about Grant Williams and him being in Charlotte. As I mentioned, it's been just under a month, but Grant Williams went on the Off the Record podcast back in June, right before the turn of July, back in June 30th. Williams went on the podcast and had some interesting things to say. He talked about how how getting moved out to Dallas instantly felt like it wasn't a natural fit. He had no bad things to say about Dallas per se, no ill will towards the Mavericks, but he did mention that it was pretty apparent from the early goings that he just wasn't a fit out there with that organization. But he said he could not feel more opposite about that being in Charlotte. He is very happy to be here. He feels rejuvenated in a reverse Paul George situation. Williams complimented the culture here in the Queen City, especially the one being built by the new regime, and even went as far as to say it's been the most refreshing thing I could have asked for in the NBA. And more importantly, I found this quote: "I was able to find my love for basketball again," said Grant Williams. So again, in an opposite reaction to Paul George's thoughts about being here in Charlotte, Grant Williams raves about his time and the ability to get to come back and play in his a town in which he grew up in, the Charlotte native. Again, that helps as well. Is very excited to be back playing at home. He feels comfortable here and wants to be here for the long term as well. This is a big thing for Grant Williams to speak about as he aims to make a larger impact this season, coming off that ACL injury and finally going to be healthy and make the impact he wants to have. The Hornets want him to have on the roster here this summer. We've already seen Grant Williams in the gym working back out. Realistically, it's probably going to be around Christmas time before we see a fully healthy Grant Williams, but even then, there's still plenty of time for him to make an impact and be a big part of this roster. Now, these comments, I think, go farther than just Grant Williams, however. They speak volumes to the culture that is being built here in Charlotte by Jeff Peterson and company, by Charles Lee and the rest of his coaching staff. And we can't take that too lightly. We don't often hear those things about the Hornets. Again, it's only been a few weeks since we heard Paul George say that his career would be over if he were to sign with the Hornets, and there's no winning culture down here. Now we have a member of the team, a native of the city who is familiar with this culture from long before his time on the roster, speaking the exact opposite about those things, saying the culture is fantastic here in Charlotte and saying it's refreshing and he found his love for basketball again. That speaks more to the rest of the organization than it does just Grant Williams, as the Hornets continue to do the right thing and provide not only the players but now the fan base with more optimism about the future as they continue to build and move forwards with players like Grant Williams, with the other young guys on the roster. It continues to give optimism and excitement to everyone involved, something we have not been able to say for a very long time here in Charlotte. Now, speaking of the future, we're going to dive into a little bit more about that here. How important is winning going to be this year for the future of LaMelo Ball with the Charlotte Hornets? Now, what I mean by that is if things start to trend in the wrong direction early, if the Hornets don't come out firing, if it starts to set up like there's another lottery pick on the way in 2026, what is that going to do for frustration-wise for LaMelo? As we know, he's now coming into his sixth season in the NBA. We know the impact that he's had. We know how good LaMelo is. We know the star level talent that he brings. But is he going to get fed up here in Charlotte if the Hornets continue to trend in the wrong direction, if they're not able to turn things around this season. Is another mediocre or bad season going to be the last straw for Melo? Is he going to start to ask to want out, to beg to get out of here? We know he's only made the one All-Star game in his time with Charlotte, despite the fact that he definitely should have made the last one. Quite a snub there for Melo, but it's still just one to his one under his belt, one All-Star appearance to his name. He's never made the playoffs, doesn't have any experience there. So again, you've got to wonder if things start to trend in the wrong direction early, middle of the season, even late in the season, if things don't go the way the Hornets and LaMelo hope they do. Is his frustration going to boil over? Is he going to start to want out? Will Charlotte consider getting rid of LaMelo, moving him before he does get overly frustrated? Will it be a sizable haul in return for LaMelo to try and build for the future? That again is a question that's got to be asked. I've seen on the internet those kinds of things being posed. Not overly verbal from LaMelo's camp about frustration building or what he may or may not want. He has seemed nothing but excited about the prospect of playing alongside some of the new additions like Colin Sexton, Spencer Dinwiddie, Con Knipple, Liam McNeely, all of the above there. LaMelo has started to build a relationship with. He's been around those guys already and seems to be optimistic about playing with them. He seems optimistic about keeping himself healthy and being on the floor. So he's not starting off frustrated by any means. That's not what I'm trying to get at. I'm just wondering, I've seen it posed as well. Is he going to become that way? Can the Hornets keep him happy if things do trend in the wrong direction? And it looks like, again, another year of mediocrity or underperforming in Charlotte, heading for another lottery pick when we know that's not the goal. The Hornets have done everything they can to get out of that spot and try and make themselves a playoff contender here in the Eastern Conference. Now, again, I say all that, and I want to say it's not championship or bust in Charlotte by any means. But if the front office does value LaMelo and keeping him here long term, is it a priority to win right now, to show signs of improvement? And if not, how are they going to keep LaMelo happy? Is it going to be worth trying to deal with that, or is it something they should just move on from overall as well? Again, another question to be posed, something else to be seen as we continue to move through July, headed towards August, getting ready for training camp, for preseason, things like that. Just another thing to keep your eye on here in Charlotte, and we'll be the ones doing that for you as well. That is going to do it for today's show, ladies and gentlemen. We're headed into another weekend. Want to wish everybody a happy Friday once again. Go out, enjoy yourselves as we continue to have some summertime weather here. Everybody stay cool, stay inside. Maybe Jeff Peterson and company, and take the weekend and finally relax. I know they're the busiest group of people in the NBA. They do not rest, have not rested so far this summer. If they choose not to do so, we'll have all the information for you right back here on another episode of Hornets Daily coming up on Monday. Again, thanks for watching, everybody. Once again, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We'll catch you on Monday with another episode of Hornets Daily.